Hey guys, it's Cass. Today I'm going to do a comparison video between two recent pen purchases. They are both the same pen, Lamy 2000. One's a fine nib and one is a medium nib. And whenever I decided to purchase these, I purchased the fine first and then the medium a few weeks later. I had a lot of trouble initially trying to decide which one I wanted to go with because I generally like to write with juicy Western medium-sized nibs. And I had heard a lot online that the Lamy 2000 wrote broader than its steel counterpart, like say the nib on the Lamy Safari or something. So I tried to find reviews or just images or discussions about the differences between the fine and the medium on the 2000, and even compared to other Lamy Safari nib sizes, and I didn't have much luck. There really wasn't as much info online pertaining to that I could find. So I ended up making the wrong choice, I think, so which is why I bought the medium. So I wanted to do a comparison between the two to help out anybody that is also trying to decide, because the Lamy 2000 is not an inexpensive pen. I did get it from Colt Pens, both of them, so I ended up paying around $125, $130 or so after some discounts that they have. So I didn't pay full price, but it's, you know, still a lot of money, which I would totally buy that at full price now. This pen is amazing, by the way. It is just perfect in every way. I love it so much. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be comparing the two pens along with some of my other pens so you can get a feel for the different nib sizes on different papers. So I have some Nimosany paper, Tomoe River, Rhodia, and Leuchtturm. And I'm going to be starting out with Tomoe because that's what I use to journal and write on most of the time. And I'm going to also be comparing those with my Delta Unica, which I recently just swapped the nib on this for Franklin-Christoph medium. And we'll do my Lamy Safari, which also has a medium nib. And I think all my others also have mediums. Oh well, I can look later, not a big deal. So let's start. I'm just gonna open to a random page here. And let me zoom in some. So first off, I'm gonna do the medium. And both of my Lamy 2000s are inked up with Delta Unica aubergine. Or no, I'm sorry, Delta Unica inks. This one has aubergine in it. The other one has pearl violet in it. The light is terrible. I'm so sorry. There's so much shadowing. Okay, so I'm just going to write the name, the ink, and all that stuff. So this is the Lamy 2000 with a fine nib. And it's got Delta Unica aubergine in it. I'm going to zoom in a little more so you can see that better. And so I thought I was really happy with the fine at first because it's writing pretty wet, which I like. I really, really like wet inks. But the more I used it, it just didn't seem as wet and as big. And it was writing more like a fine than a medium. So I impulsively, the first one is an impulse purchase, by the way. I impulsively went ahead and bought the medium. And I really prefer the medium over the fine. Even though I don't have the same inks in them, but I do like the medium quite a bit more. So this is the Delta Unica Pearl Violet, and you can see the medium is definitely thicker than the fine, which this looks a little deceiving. The fine is actually I wouldn't even necessarily say the fine is comparable to a Western fine. It is thicker than a Western fine, for sure. But I'd say it's like a fine medium. I wouldn't necessarily say it's right at a medium, which is what a lot of people were saying, that the fine writes like a medium. I don't know if I would say that exactly, but it is definitely thicker than a fine. It's in between the two. And then this is the medium, definitely super wet, and I love it. So I'm gonna do now the Lamy Safari, my Violet edition, and this is inked up with Pearl Violet as well. And this is a medium steel nib. Oop. Violet, and this also. And you can see that this is thinner than the 2000. Just a little bit. They're actually quite similar, which is why I think I like the medium 2000 over the fine, because this to me is closer to my steel medium than the fine. Now, if you put a little pressure on it, of course it's gonna write a little thicker, but it's a gold nib. I'd rather not put a lot of pressure on it. I don't even like putting pressure on my steel nibs. It just freaks me out because I'm afraid I'm gonna spring them. Even though I don't nearly put enough pressure to spring them, I'm just really worried about that. So lastly, I've got my Delta Unica, and this is a Franklin-Christoph medium nib that I just swapped out for the, you know, Delta one that came with it. So this is a Delta Unica in matte black, and this also has a diatramentous ink in it. You can tell I like this brand. This is the Document Violet. Oh, and it's a medium. And that one you can see is kind of similar to the Safari medium, and this is a wet ink. All of these inks are very wet, which I like. And clearly the Lamy 2000 medium is writing a little wider than the rest of them. The fine is writing kind of similarly to the Delta, to the Franklin-Christoph nib I have in here. But I mean, overall, I do think I like the Lamy 2000 more. Between these two, I prefer the medium for the Lamy 2000. So this is on, let me zoom out just a tad. This is on the Tomoe River. And it writes, they all write really smoothly, no problem there. But you can definitely tell that the Lamy 2000 medium is a little wider than the rest of them. So that's the Tomoe. Let's write on the Nimosany now. And let's do the fine again. And I will say I do prefer the medium as well, and I don't think it's due to the nib size, but the Lamy 2000 fine has a lot of nib creep, which I know nib creep is normal and it doesn't bother me, because I know it's normal. But I do prefer the look with the silver and the nib. If there was no nib creep, the medium does not have any nib creep ever, which I love. This one, just the whole nib is covered within a, there's so much ink on it. And it'll get more ink. The more I cap it and uncap it, it just pulls ink out. But both nibs are incredibly, incredibly smooth. There is nothing wrong with them. They write so well. So, it's a fine. Okay, so looking at this one, again, clearly the Lamy 2000 medium is the broader of all of them. These two look pretty similar. The Lamy 2000 fine looks quite similar to these two. Maybe a little thinner, about the same, I don't know. But I still like this one the best. But yeah, so this is on the Nimosany paper again, which writes a little dry. For me, it's a little, I don't know, a little too chalky. It reminds me of Rhodia, which I don't like. So I don't normally write on this paper. I bought a bunch of these little notebooks and like the mini ones. This is around B6 size, I think, this little top spiral. I bought a bunch of these before I realized I did not like the paper. So I have a bunch of them to burn through. Okay, so now this is Rhodia, just one of their webby notebooks. I journaled in one of these once and never again. Again, just super chalky, didn't like it. Okay, and I also don't like the color. It's like super yellow. I like bright white. See, no nib creep. Looks great. Oh, okay. So actually you can see a little feathering on that one before I do the others. Especially noticeable over here. Nib, the nib word. Not much, but a little bit. And I don't really see any with the aubergine. So I get the medium nib obviously puts out a little more ink than the fine nib, and it's feathering a little bit, which I have found that diatomaceous inks can feather. I think they're just so freaking wet. Let's see if this one feathers. Not really. I'm not seeing as much anyway as I do with the medium. So, yeah, pretty much the same results as on the other papers. Obviously, the Lamy medium is wider. These two look very similar. This one actually, on this paper, looks a little thinner than these two. So that's interesting. Definitely looks more like a fine, which I was surprised, because whenever I first inked up the pen and after I wrote with it for a while, and this is Rhodia, again, in a webby dot grid. When I first got the Lamy 2000 in fine and I was writing with it, I thought I liked it because it was writing kind of like a medium. But the more I wrote with it, it started resembling a fine more, and I was like, I don't really like this anymore. So that's why I got the medium. And I do prefer the medium over the fine, as I have said a couple of times already. So this is a Leuchtturm, just regular A5 dot grid. So again, Leuchtturm. This paper soaks up a little more ink than the Rhodia or the Nimosany. So the lines on this one look a little thicker, I think, than on those. Again, a little thicker here. These two, again, look about the same. The fine nib actually looks kind of similar to the Delta, I think. This one might be a little thicker. The nib I have on this one is pretty wet though, on my violet. Overall though, I do prefer the thickness of these over the fine. So I'm glad that I bought the medium over the fine. I just like the thickness of it more. It lays down more ink. I get more shading if I'm gonna have a shading ink in there. Pearl Violet and Aubergine too are not particularly good shaders, but I really like the colors, so I use them. Document Violet has 0 shading. I don't know if I'm going to buy a bottle of this. I just recently bought a sample, but probably not going to get that. But anyway, so those were the comparisons between the Leuchtturm, the Rhodia, the Nimosany, and the Tomoe. And so yeah, the fine nib does write thicker than a fine on the 2000, but I wouldn't necessarily say it writes like a medium, as a lot of people said on the internet, which you can't believe everything you see on the internet. But yeah, like I said, there weren't that many examples. So I just wanted to do something if anybody was having a hard time deciding between a fine or a medium on the 2000. And again, the inks used in this video are super wet to begin with. If you have a fine nib with a Lamy 2000 and you're using a really dry ink, it will probably write like a fine. And the medium as well will probably write more like a Western medium. The medium, as it stands with a wet ink, writes in between a medium and a broad, I think. But it's not too broad for me to write with or journal with. I don't like my lines being so thick that I can't discern the individual letters, which I don't feel it's gotten to that point with the medium here. So yeah, if you want something that's gonna be fine, the fine may be a little too thick for you. The medium would definitely be too thick. They do run a little thicker than their Western counterparts, I think, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they run a whole size bigger, just a little thicker. But I do prefer the medium personally over the fine, just with the 2000. The fine does write a little too thin for me. So I will probably sell it and just keep my medium, because I really like the way the medium writes. It is super smooth. I would definitely recommend the 2000 to anyone who doesn't have one or is considering it. It is a fantastic pen. It feels great. I love it despite it being not the type of filling system that I usually prefer, which is cartridge. It does take a little longer to clean out, but that's okay because the pen just, it rocks. This pen rocks, and I would definitely recommend it. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys. I really hope you can get something out of it if you are trying to decide between the medium or the fine, or even, you know, one of the other sizes. Hopefully this helps a little bit. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Bye.